Jimmy Bashline was the creator of the Jay Bee Circus. He was born in 1917 in Butler. As a young man, his grandparents took him and his two siblings, his brother and sister, to the circus every time it came to Butler. And not many remember this, but the circus used to come into town by rail car, down by Osterling Feed Mill, which is still there today, and unload and march up Jefferson Street to the top of the Jefferson Hill where the high school is today. It was a big field, and that's where they pitched their tent and put the circus on. And Jimmy remembered the wagons, the animals, and most of all, the elephants that they walked up to the circus area, and of course back to the train when it was done. And as a young man, he never missed a circus unless he was in school. So he developed a love of the circus and everything about it. He went into military during World War II. Now, when he came home, he read an article in Popular Mechanics about building a circus wagon. And that's where the circus started. He started this circus in 1946 when he got out of the military. And he worked for 20 years on what's behind me here today. 20 years of his work, and everything, all the wagons he made, all the painting, all the lettering, all the signs, he did himself. He wasn't just a circus builder. He was an artist. He was a sculptor. He just was fantastic in anything he did with art. As a young man after the military, he continued going to circuses, and he took his camera with him. He took pictures of everything. Particularly, you'll notice there's a cook tent over there. He paid particular attention to the details, and what was actually at the circus, and he tried to replicate all of that stuff. And it's pretty involved if you walk around it and really look at stuff from the unloading of the animals on the train spur to the actual three-ring circus and all the acts. And if you look at all the circus acts, you'll see they aren't solid to the board. They lift out, and they run on 110 electricity. So he could take whatever acts he wanted to take to church groups, to schools, to civic places, and he could go show his circus on a smaller scale. And he did that many, many, many times. He became members of the Circus Model Builders. And that's a group of people across the country and maybe around the world that build model circuses. He had his sign shop down on Newcastle Street by Broad Street School, and he started in the garage at the sign shop. As the circus grew, he had to move it out to his house. Anybody wanted to come in and look at it, he loved to show it off, both at the sign shop and at his home. So he did move it to the farm show twice, I believe 1968 and 69. And then I was told the last time he had it there was a big rainstorm, and some of it got wet, and he never did it again. And he also had it at the Mellon Bank lobby when Mellon Bank was located up on the Diamond, and it sat there for a while. Other than that, it was at his house until it was moved to the Historical Society in 2007. And I'll let Ed take it from there.
It was moved to the Historical Society at the Heritage Center, known as Robin's Furniture Store, back in the early 2000s. We were approached about it when I was president of the Historical Society, and we were concerned how we could get it there, and there was a purchase price. So I approached David Bond, the former president of Armco, and he agreed to make a donation. And then there was another donation made that helped to cover that cost. And so therefore it was moved to the Heritage Center, and it was set up. Hag Collins was the executive director, but she moved in as president. At that point, her husband think his name's Larry, was very instrumental with he and his group of moving that in and setting up on the ground floor. And they did a fantastic job. We then wanted to get the public in there, and we had various donations, including the Butler Eagle. They stepped forward with a donation to help us keep the doors open because we went through some tough times financially, and the Eagle helped us out at that point. So we were very grateful for their help as well as other organizations. And it stayed there till the Heritage Center, they had to close. And at that point, the new administration had built a carriage house next to the Lowry Shaw House, and they were moving things to place in storage. And Jimmy Bashline Circus was moved there and placed in storage at that time. So at that point, Bob Brandon approached me about that it was being moved out of the carriage house to another location outside of Butler County. I was not very happy camper over that because this was Butler County. So then in came my good friend Jack Cohen with tourism, and he took the ball and ran with it, and I'm going to turn it over to him.
And well, from here, Bob had called me and told me that this was moved away. And I said, well, why would that happen? And the Historical Society at that point had a new executive. And she knew this was a beautiful piece, but they didn't have room to show it. So she sent it out to different house museums and different museums if anybody would be interested to have this piece and show it. And sure enough, there was a gentleman from, I believe it was Lawrence County. And so as we went there and we saw half of it built, the rest of it being in boxes, Bob had called that gentleman to see if we could get it back, and he wasn't ready to do so. And then, if you knew Bob was insisting, is a good way of putting it, to get that back. And so I got involved, and we went out there, and I talked to this gentleman that owned it. He didn't have any thoughts about letting people see it for the public. I talked to him about it and said how important it is to be seen by the public, and that we would like to get it back into Butler. 2 or 3 times I had to go visit with him, have talks, get to know him. He got to know me, and I promised him that if he gave it back to us, we would get it and find a place for it to set up. And we did. And so Bob and we rented a truck. I drove it out there. We started putting everything in the truck, and I didn't know if we had enough room. And it was a 24-foot panel truck, but you can't stack stuff, this things. But it was fun. And we got everything back, and we went over to Bob's house, and he had cleared out the garage so that we could utilize the garage to get it reset up. And sure enough, we did. And I'll let Dan take it now, because after we got it all unloaded and put everything in, I went home, and that's when everybody started saying, we got to do this. And everybody agreed it had to come back to Butler. And sure enough, there was a group of gentlemen, and Dan could talk about those folks, about who came together and how we got it put back together. It was brought back to Butler in March of 2021. And I got involved after it was in Bob's garage, because I grew up in a church in Butler that Jimmy and his family belonged to, and I knew Jimmy and his family as a young man and wanted to kind of honor his legacy and help on this circus. Bob told us that Charlotte, his wife, gave him till the 4th of July to get the circus operational. We worked pretty hard for the next 3 or 4 months, and we made the deadline and opened it invitation only, and then he opened it a couple times for people anybody that wanted to come to look at it in the garage. Now, we did not have everything that's set up here at the Eagle today on display. There just wasn't enough room, but the circus board and some of the signs and some of the artwork was available. But there was probably 4 or 5 people that helped pretty religiously on it. Bob, of course, was the spearhead behind it all. Myself, Ruth Snyder, and Mark Hall did most of the work, and there was others. I'm sorry, I can't remember everybody, but we got it ready in July of 21 and tried to show it as much as we could to get people to see it until it got too cold and we shut it down. And then, as we all remember, tragically, Bob passed away December 7th of that year. And Charlotte, it was on the old Ramsey farm out in Center Township, and Charlotte couldn't maintain the property and told us she was going to sell it, and we needed to find a home for the circus. And from the size of it, it's not easy to find a home for it. And I can't thank the Eagle enough. They stepped up and said we can store it here. And from the very get-go, they said we could hook it up and display it. But I was really kind of hoping there was some people trying to, make arrangements for the circus and other items in Butler County. And that hasn't happened yet, but I hope it does eventually. And eventually I came to realize if we're going to show this circuit, if the Eagle was willing to let us fix it up and show it, that, that's what we should do. And I talked to Tammy Shuey, and she said, by all means. So, and we hooked the circus back up, and it's as you see it today. So, I'm excited to have the public see it. And it truly is a treasure of Butler County, in my opinion, and it was something that Bob Brandon believed needed to be in Butler County, and with Jack's help and the help of everybody that worked on it, it is back here.
None of this would have happened if Bob didn't press to get it back. And we got to remember that. Bob Brandon made sure that we all kept our nose to the ground and made sure we brought this thing back. And sure enough, I was glad enough to be part of that. People need to see it. When I took my grandchildren out to Bob's garage and, it was running, you guys set it up so nice, my grandchildren still talk about it. That they didn't see a circus like this ever. How many children ever experience a circus like this today? I just think that it's vital that we find a place. And sure enough, the Eagle stepped up and said, hey, we've got some room. Why don't we set it up here so people could see it? And for me, that's everything. The ownership was given to the Tourism Bureau of the circus. It's not going anywhere. It stays in Butler County, and whatever it needs, we'll support that because we need to make sure that it runs and that people get to see it. The history of it's too important.
We wanted it to stay in Butler County. We did not want it to leave Butler County. And again, I emphasize that it belongs here in Butler County. And really, it belongs right here in Butler. And so I am extremely grateful for the work that Jack did to contact the Eagle and to bring it here, because this is where it belongs. And I thank Jack and his group to bring it here.
When Jimmy passed away, there was probably 4 pretty instrumental groups in keeping this circus alive. One, the Historical Society, the Butler Tourism Group with Jack Cohen, and Bob Brandon, bringing it back to his garage, and the Butler Eagle for everything they've done, not only now, but in the advertising and the articles they wrote in the past about the circus. It's this wasn't done by any 1 or 2 people. It took a group of people to keep this alive, and I got to say that I appreciate everything that's been done over the years by everybody to keep this alive.
My only concluding remark is that I knew Jimmy more late in life than these other people, or than Dan did. And I sat at Associated Artists function, and that gentleman always had a smile on his face. and loved to talk about not only this, but art. He loved art, and he just sat there. He wasn't selling anything. He was just there to promote art in Butler. So God bless Jimmy Bashline.
Not only did he love art, as Ed has said, he loved the city of Butler and everything about it. So that's one reason it's important that this stuff is still here in Butler. And it's Jimmy's legacy, I think. Again, he started it in 1946, and until 2007, when the Historical Society took it, he had it, and he showed that circus, and his health began to fail. And I believe that's when he contacted Ed Wadding and the Historical Society, because he wanted the circus to go somewhere it would be displayed and people could see it. And they took 6 months to clean it up and get it back in good working order and try to keep it as true to form as what Jimmy had it. And a month before he passed away in May of 2008, they opened it to the public, and they were able to tell him that it was on display at the Heritage Center and people could see it again. So I think that's an important fact, that before he died, he knew the circus was still alive. And there's no question in my mind that Jimmy Bashline and Bob Brandon are smiling down on us today, that the circus is going to be seen again.